This is Cooking with Dave and Audie. I'm Dave, that's Audie.
Heard.
Today's the ultimate guide to butchering chicken. We butchered chicken a couple of times recently. We want to do an ultimate guide to breaking down chicken. We can do it once, get it all out there, and then refer to it, in perpetuity. We're going to do an 8-piece breakdown, we're going to do a 6-piece and a 4-piece breakdown, and we're going to do 2 different galantine breakdowns. The only thing we're not going to cover is spatchcocking. There's a reason for that, and we'll discuss it more when we get to that stage. Let's talk about chicken for a second. So, as far as I'm concerned, you always want to buy a whole bird. First of all, because it's much cheaper to do it that way. You can use it in so many different ways. It's just the best way to go. And once you learn how to break one down, you'll agree it's the best way to go.
Yep.
There are a few things we need to discuss. So one of the things is not wasting food. So it's important to respect and realize and understand that all of these animals used to be live animals. And their life was taken so that there could be food in the market. I went there and bought some of them. In order to respect that life that was sacrificed, we don't waste a single bit of what we buy.
Heard.
There's also one more important thing to discuss, and that's safety. Because having salmonella poisoning really sucks.
Yes, it does.
I know that because I almost died from it.
Yes, he did.
And I didn't poison myself, it was for eating food in a restaurant.
Just to clear things up.
So chicken is pretty dangerous, especially in your home kitchen. It's probably one of the most dangerous things that you're going to buy and use in your home kitchen. We need to treat these animals, this product, as if it's tainted. Everything that it touches, everything that it sits near, we need to assume is infected with salmonella or E. coli. And for that reason, we have an isolated workspace. Everything here when we're done is going to be sanitized completely.
Including the table.
Everything that I touch, my knife, my board, even the rags that I have securing my board are all going to be sanitized with bleach. I think bleach is the best. You can use whatever product that you want. But it's important to understand that if you go touching everything in your kitchen with dirty chicken hands, you very well could get really, really sick.
And get somebody else sick.
Like I said, I've had salmonella poisoning. It is not fun. You don't want to be there. I don't want you to be there. So just take my safety tip of the day to heart.
Heard.
Anything this touches, anything this goes near, needs to be completely, thoroughly sanitized before you're done and you move on to other things. First, we're going to do the 8-piece breakdown. When you're breaking down whole chicken, one of the easiest things you can do to help yourself is take out the wishbone first. There's an easy way to do that. The wishbone is basically the collarbone. What's the real name for it? Clavicle?
Yeah.
If I remember correctly. So what I do is I feel it with my finger. I take my knife, and on the breast side of that bone, I make just a little incision with the tip of the knife on both sides. I get my fingertip in that incision, and then I separate the meat from the bone all the way to the top and all the way to the bottom. Then, since this is the wishbone, there's a little connection at the top. I reach my finger in underneath it, separating the meat both sides, and pull it out. I've detached everything. I even got it out whole this time. Normally it snaps in half. That's going in our stock bucket.
And why is that important to take the wishbone out?
It just makes the rest of the process so much easier because you don't have to work around it while you're taking the breast and the wings off. So we need to take the wings off in one piece. We're going to need to get into that joint. The easiest way to do it is from the back side, and you can kind of see that fold right there is where we need to get into. I find it's easier to pop that joint first, and I bend it all the way that way, and then I bend it all the way up like that. I haven't popped the joint completely open, but I've stretched all those tendons out to make it easier for myself. Tip of the knife, I'm going to open that skin up. I'm going to work my way towards the joint. You can already see it there. That's the bone to the wing. The breast is down there. I just need to get under that bone and remove the rest of the wing. So I do that with a semicircular cut, just like that. Next thing we need to do is remove the legs. Once again, if we're going to be cooking skin on birds, the most important place to leave the skin is the breast. So I like to bend the leg out, and you can see I'm pulling the skin tight there, and you can see a little seam. I want to work just on top of that seam. Get into that skin, bring it around, down there. Come back up here and just separate that little bit there. So I've left all the skin on the breast there. Next thing is pop this joint open. That's really easy. You just hyperextend it. there's a little nugget of muscle. You can see that bulge right there. That's called the oyster. One of the best bites of the chicken. I want to keep that on this thigh. It's one of my favorite bits. So I just get my knife tip underneath it, come around, underneath it again, and if you watch here, I'm just bringing my knife underneath that, in between that joint, off the bottom. That's our leg. There's a bone that runs right in between the breasts. We need to get our knife on either side of that bone, and it doesn't really matter which side we do first. So here's the bone. I'm on the right side of that bone. Get that separated. Come all the way up that side, and that's where the collarbone comes in handy. Normally the collarbone would stop me there.
Right.
Now it can't stop me.
Right.
I got an easier access into this breast. So here's the bone on this side. Breast is on that side. I'm just going to take the breast off of the bone using small strokes with the tip of my knife. Just getting right around that connective tissue and the bones, and you can see the bones there. I can probably go this way now. Once I get up here, there's a tendon right there and a little bone that connects to it. I just sever that, pull the breast away, make my final cut. Now we have left just a chicken carcass. There's a little bit of meat on here. It's not worth really messing with and trying to pull off. It's mainly just bones, connective tissue. The only thing I do is take this little nugget of fat at the bottom there, here where the little hiney hole is,
Yeah.
and pull it off. That is a delicious nugget of fat you can use for all kinds of things. What can you use it for, Dave? Well, I'm glad you asked. Render it down, cook your vegetables in it, sear your chicken breast in it, throw it in a stew pot for extra flavor, grind it into sausage for extra fat. There's literally thousands of things you can do with this. This is gold. This is dynamite. Right
Don't you
here.
need that for matzo ball soup?
Yeah, it's schmaltz is what you render it into.
Yeah.
Big time in Jewish cooking, not so common in
Still
the rest of
fucking
Western
delicious.
cooking. So you see this little line of fat going across there. That basically goes right into the top of that knee joint, which is where my fingertip is there. I need to get the tip of my knife, sever that joint so that we can disconnect the two. So I always look for that white line. I get my knife just towards the drumstick from that white line. Feel for that joint. You can see it now. I've split it a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm getting right in the middle of it and sever it. It's completely open. Can you see?
Yeah, I sure can.
And then I just go back and cut off the rest of it, just like this. Our two lovely breasts, right? Our two lovely thighs, our two lovely drums, our two lovely wings. Whole chicken, mainly deboned. There's a bone in your thigh, there's a bone in your drumstick. I'll show you how to take that out here in a minute. 8 pieces. 2, 4, 6, 8. Next one, 4-piece breakdown. My favorite way to do it. For a home cook, with a little bit of practice, you should be able to do this in 3 or 4 minutes, 5 minutes tops. For a professional, somebody does this in a kitchen, you know, and gets paid to do it, this should take you like 30, 40 seconds to do. Once again, to make our job easier, we're gonna do the wishbone. So the elbow joint here is a little bit tricky. It takes a while to get used to where to cut, but if you look at the apex of that curve there, that's mainly the elbow. So somewhere right in there, right through. Same thing on this side, right at the apex of that curve, somewhere right in there. We're gonna take off the legs and we're gonna take off the breasts, basically chicken quarters. We're looking at that seam again, right there, between the breast and the leg. Saving as much skin on the breast as we can. Getting down, pop that socket out, get underneath that oyster, and then out the back leg. Bone down there, right? Find it, get on one side of it. I'm on the right side again. Come out the bottom, go all the way up the top, and then follow the bones and the cartilage along to separate it from the rest of the carcass. Out there. A couple of cuts here. Looking for that tendon, found it. I've got the little drumette on there, so there's an actual joint to separate. I pop it open, get in between it, cut it off. Our nice skin on breasts, airline breasts with a little drumette on there. And legs, still bone in, still skin on, but it's the thigh and the drum connected. The way you make a 6-piece breakdown, so we did an 8-piece, this is a 4-piece. The way you do a 6-piece is then just separate the thigh and the drum. Here's a little trick I picked up from Jacques Pepin, legendary French cook. So you get your wing flat and the wing tip, right? You want to open up that joint by just hyperextending it one way or the other. There we go. Inside of the wing here, and that's important that it's on the inside, not the outside. If you hyperextend that joint, you can see the bones kind of sticking out the skin there. Pop them through the skin, just muscle it out right there. I need to get that one out too. Pops through the skin. This is the little bone. That would be the radius, right? And this would be the ulna, I think.
I think you're right.
That's the big bone, that's the little bone. Pull the little bone completely out, and you just wrench it out of there. Like that. Cut off the wing tip right behind that joint. And then push that down. Got yourself a nice, beautiful little lollipop
Let it sit on the
chicken wing. Okay, these next two breakdowns, the galantines, are way more complicated, take way more practice, much less common to use in the kitchen, but we'll show you why it's a good reason to learn how to break them down. And it only takes practice. It looks a little complicated, it's really not, it just takes a little practice. So we're basically going to debone these birds completely whole, and one of them we're going to leave completely whole, and one of them we're going to lay open flat. So the first one we're going to do is completely whole. That's the more complicated one, and the one I would almost never use.
Right.
The other one I'll show you is the way I do all the time. So I'm looking for the apex of that curve right there, which is about here. Work my way down that joint. Stock pot. Pull that wing out. Apex of the curve right about there. Work my way down that joint. I cut a bone there. There we go. That goes in the stock pot. First place to start is the wishbone. We need to work this bird from the top down to peel it basically off of the bone. The first place is this joint where the little wing comes in here. And that's basically right there where my fingertip is. You just gotta stick your fingertip into it to feel. That's just shoulder bone, and then that's the tip of the drumette right there. With the very tip of my knife, I'm gonna work my way into that joint and try and get in between the bones. There we go. And what I'm doing is just working my knife a little bit deeper and a little bit deeper until I've severed all the tendons that connect that joint together. And I've just done it there. This is completely separate from everything that was connecting it to the carcass. We need to peel the breasts off of the bone. You normally want to just give a little incision there. That's so I can open everything up like that.
Right.
I want to get my finger under the skin along the back, in between the spine and the skin, and just peel it to separate it from the carcass. Down to about the hip bones, and I'm about out of them there. The rest of it's knife work now. I'm just going to use the tip of my knife to start separating everything that's holding the meat of this bird onto the bone of this bird. I want to get my fingers into it. So here's the keel bone running down here and the breasts on either side. I want to get one finger on the left side, one finger on the right side, push it all the way in, and try and start separating that meat from the bone. And you can see it peeling off.
Yeah.
I don't want to rip this skin though, so now I need to start using a knife. And you can see where everything's holding on there if I'm getting the light very well. I can see right there, you know, it's hanging on. I can see in there, you know, it's hanging on. So I'm just going to use the tip of the knife, start separating that. And you got to be careful not to cut this skin here. Follow this bone along right there. This is a lot harder to do and try and show you than just do. I can pretty much lay that open now. I want to push that all down. Sort of like you're taking off a skirt or something like that. So now I've basically got the rib cage and the spine separated from the meat. That tendon was hanging off, or tender, so I'm just going to peel it off. Give us a little more space.
Right.
The next sort of part we need to get is where that hip joint connects. So I'm just going to finish going down the breast. There's a little bit left there. I'm just working it down, working it down. All right, I'm at the hip joint there. So now I need to pop those hip joints out, same way we did on the other ones. It's just harder to see, but you can see there, it's out. Let's see if I can show you. There, she's out.
Yeah.
Come back around this side. I need to start separating everything from there down.
But you do not want to cut through the skin.
You cannot cut through the skin, not for this technique anyways. So I'm going to start separate that with little small cuts with the tip of the knife. Alright, I'm down to the joint pretty well there. Just separating the skin from the spine, and then I'll finish off this joint here. There we go. So I've disconnected that joint completely now, all the tendons and the joint, and do the same thing around this side. Now I just take that and pull it off the rest of the carcass with my hands. Just peel it off. Comes off pretty easy. There's our carcass. That's going in the stock pot. So that's a whole deboned chicken. It's still connected, still a whole bird, but the bones are taken out of it. You could go and remove the bones from the legs as well, and we're going to do that on the next one. You're going to do a whole galantine. I never use it, just so you know how to do it. I've done it, but that's how you do it. This is the fun one.
This is the best galantine technique.
If you're going to do a galantine, and it's necessary sometimes, for people doing it at home, probably never necessary, but good to know because it's fun to be able to do things with it. So what we're going to do, wings off. There we go. So I'm going to completely debone this bird, including the legs of the bird, but I'm going to lay it open as I do it. And that makes it very much easier because you almost don't have to use your knife at all.
Right.
So I'll make one cut right down the center of the spine.
And you got to start at the
from
spine.
Top to bottom. What I'm going to do is separate the skin, and I'm just getting my finger underneath there, and separate it from where it's connected here. There's only about 4 cuts we need to make for this. The joint of the wings here and the joint of the hips there. Pop that back, and pop it forward. Find that joint, get in there with the tip of my knife. In the joint, little semicircular cut. Disconnect all that stuff. We'll slit out the back. I use my thumb to peel off the breasts from the back there, which is just that easy. I get my fingers in between the breast and the rib cage, start peeling it back, which is basically just rolling it forward. Breasts are disconnected. All I had to do was detach the wings. I'll pop those hip bones out of socket again. I'm going to get underneath each one, just like last time. Once I'm through the joint, I use my hands to peel it off the rest of the way. Get on this side, catch that oyster. Once I'm through the joint, use my hands to peel everything off and just peel it off of the carcass. The last thing we need to do here is just take the bones out of this. So this is deboned off of the carcass whole and open, but there's still bones in the thigh and the drum. There's still bones here. We need to remove those. it gets a little bit tricky, but I'll show you what to look for, how to do this. So the first thing, to debone a thigh, there's a little white line right there. I don't know if you can see it very well.
Yeah.
A little fat. Make an incision along that, which is basically along that bone. Come over the other side, make an incision right along the bone on the other side, down to that knee joint. Get my finger underneath the bone, pull it off that way. Back side of the knife, not the blade, the back side of the knife. I'm going to scrape that meat down to the knee joint. I'm down to the kneecap there. You can see the kneecap right there at the tip of the knife. Need to get above that. Start disconnecting those tendons. Now I'm down to the actual knee joint here, and I need to get on top of that. Let me separate this back a little bit more. I'm going to get around that knee joint. Once I'm below it, I just bring the knife all the way around it, down to the bone. Once I'm pretty sure I got everything pretty well disconnected, back of the knife again. Let's work the rest of that off. Once I got that down, just pull it through inside out.
What does that remind you of?
Like a prolapsed butthole. Okay, last bone, the little drumettes here. That's the top of the bone. I need to get around it. Disconnect everything that's holding it together, all the little tendons. Another one right there. I think I've done a better job this time. I should be able to just use my fingers. There we go. Pull that out. Stock pot. Turn it back right side out. Now we have a completely deboned, totally deboned, not a bone in the whole thing, chicken. If you're going to make roast chicken, this is the way to do it.
Yeah.
We're going to show you how to do that soon. This is every way you could ever want to break down a chicken. We've got our 4-piece breakdown, the breasts with the little airlines on them, the legs bone in, our 8-piece breakdown, which is the wings, the breasts, the thighs, the drums. If you wanted to do a 6-piece breakdown, basically you do the breasts and then disconnect the thigh and the drum. We did our whole galantine, which is a whole bird, completely whole. We could take the bones out, but we showed you how to do it on the other one. I almost never do this. And then the open, the flat out galantine, which is completely deboned and then laid open. If you're doing roast chicken, grilled chicken, that kind of stuff, this is the one that you want to do. Now, let's talk about why you would want to do each one of these.
Okay.
All of these, the 6-piece, the 8-piece, the 4-piece, just for doing chicken. If you want breasts, use the breasts. You want wings, use the wings. You want thighs, use the thighs. The drums, use the drums. Everything else you can use some other time, some other way. Galantines, these fellas here are more for doing fancier food. So there's a traditional dish called a galantine, which is a deboned bird and it's stuffed with things and it's glazed with a gelatin thickened bechamel sauce. I would never do that at home. I would never even show y'all how to do it because it's not worth knowing how to do it. It's not that great. But if you wanted to do like a turducken, or you wanted to do a whole stuffed chicken, or you wanted to do all kinds of stuff, and we're going to give you some ideas here in a week or two. These are the breakdowns you want to use. These are definitely worth learning how to do. This one I do all the time, and this is great because it lays out flat for doing things like grilling or smoking or barbecuing, because it will lay flat out on your grill, and you don't have to worry about cooking it so much because there's not bones in it, so you never have to worry about it being raw down near the bone and then cook the rest of the way through. This is a great technique to learn how to do. So we never have to go back and show you how to do chicken again. You know how to do it. Oh, I talked about spatchcock earlier. So spatchcocking a bird is simply cutting out the spine and then laying it out flat as we have done this one. I say if you're going to spatchcock a bird, you may as well do this open galantine because it's better anyways than
Right.
having to mess with all the bones. That's why I didn't show you how to do spatchcock. We spatchcocked this bird as we broke it down, and this is a better way to do it anyways. We're cooking with Dave and Audie. I'm Dave. That's Audie.
Heard.
Thank you for joining us. If you like our videos, subscribe to our channel. Put a like on your favorite one. Leave us a comment. Tell us what you want to see. And we love you. Have an awesome day.